A Sonnet for Remembrance Sunday by Malcolm Guite. November pierces with its black remembrance of all the bitterness and waste of war. Our silence tries but fails to make a semblance of that lost peace they thought worth fighting for. Our silence seethes instead with wraiths and whispers and all the restless rumours of new wars. The shells are singing as we sing our vespers. No moment is unscarred. There is no pause. In every instant, bloodied innocence falls to the weary earth. And whilst we stand, quiescence ends again in acquiescence. And Abel's blood still cries in every land. One silence only might redeem that blood. Only the silence of a dying God. It is a real privilege for me to be able to record this Remembrance Sunday sermon here in the Folkestone Museum at their exhibition celebrating 100 years of the burial of the unknown warrior in Westminster Abbey. Massive thanks and gratitude must go to Darren Cowd and the team here for allowing this to take place. I've lived in Dover all my life, and so the story of the unknown soldier and his journey through Dover, arriving on British soil, has always been part of my remembrance history. 10 years ago, I was teaching at a school that was involved in the 90-year celebration and commemoration of the event. My children were at the school involved in putting on a performance commemorating that and the lives of some of the people that might have been the soldier carried through Dover. And here we are, now celebrating and commemorating 100 years of the burial of the soldier at Westminster Abbey. It was only when I moved into the deanery that I found out that actually the idea for the commemoration is also a South East Kent event. Rev'd Railton was a curate at the Church of St Mary and St Eanswythe, just along the road. And it was while he was there that he went to France as Padre for the Armed Forces. We'll find out a little bit more about him later on. But this exhibition here is to his memory and the lasting legacy that he has provided us. So 100 years ago, almost exactly, 4 bodies were exhumed amid the utmost secrecy from battlefield cemeteries set up across Europe. The soldiers charged with the task were told nothing of its purpose. The bodies then were transported, and from the 4 of them, 1 was selected, with the other 3 being buried. This single body then was offered all the honour and dignity usually reserved for the highest ranking official, and in a series of sombre stages was then transported across Europe, arriving in Dover adorned with a Union flag and to the sound of a 19-gun salute, ready for its journey to a final resting place in Westminster Abbey. This happened 100 years ago. None of us here today can possibly know what it was like. We can get an idea from pictures and from stories passed on by others. But these events are now outside our living memory. And yet, there's something about this, something so compelling in its human nature, that stories like the unknown soldier pull us time and time again. And at this time of remembrance, it is our privilege in humility to remember him and others. To this day, the unknown soldier's tomb, surrounded as it is by royalty and celebrity in Westminster Abbey, is unique. It is the only tomb on which it is forbidden to stand. Some of us will vividly recall scenes of Princess Diana's funeral back in 1997. Enormous swathes of London were cordoned off, roads were blocked, people's lives were disrupted to make way for this funeral cortege. On arrival at the Abbey doors, however, it was the funeral cortege that made way. And instead of walking across the tomb, the pallbearers sidestepped to go round it. What an extraordinary legacy for what or who was in many ways an ordinary man, doing what hundreds of thousands of people had done before him and continue to do. Perhaps we should challenge the use of the term ordinary. The man buried in this tomb is unique and special and precious, in the same way that each of us is unique and special and precious. And it was a similarly ordinary man who came up with the idea of a means to commemorate all those who had lost their lives and had no named grave. Rev'd Railton, as I said, was a curate here in Folkestone when he became padre to the armed forces. And when he was on the Western Front, he was appalled by the suffering that he witnessed. He in fact was awarded the Military Cross for his own efforts in the war. But he saw that that suffering continued when he returned home. When he was asked later where he'd got the idea for the tomb of the unknown soldier from, he spoke about seeing an unnamed grave when he was in France and being assaulted by all manner of questions about the body that that grave contained, who they might have been, what potential had not been fulfilled for them. And he said this: "What can I do to ease the pain of father, mother, brother, sister, sweetheart, wife, and friend?" Quietly and gradually, there came out of the mist of thought this answer, clear and strong: let this body, this symbol of him, be carried reverently over the sea to his native land. And so the idea was born. When the coffin was transported through the fields of France, put onto a train in Dover and carried up to London, it was draped in a Union flag. It was the same flag that Rev'd Railton had used over the altar when he was serving on the front. An unknown soldier to us he may be. But let us not forget what we do know. We do know that he was someone's son. He may well have been father, husband, brother. We do know he will have left people behind, people who grieved his absence and mourned his passing, people who were left unknown, unknowing where he was. As we read the names on our memorials, let us also then call to mind this unknown soldier, who represents for us the hundreds of thousands of soldiers whose bodies could not be identified. He represents for us all those who in conflict and in peacetime have made the ultimate sacrifice. And he represents for us all those who are left behind, grieving the loss of a loved one. An unknown soldier to us he may be, but let us not forget what we do know. God knows him by name and loves him, as he does each of us. Whether the sun is high in the sky or hidden behind clouds of thunder, we can be sure and confident in the promise of God's unending love. We can be sure God always remembers us, whether our name is written on a stone in a graveyard or not. We can be sure God always remembers us and remembers all those who have passed into his perfect peace. The poppies, the memorials, the wreaths, the scenes of lowered flags, the sounds of notes played on a solitary bugle, the tomb of an unknown warrior. These all serve as prompts to call to mind all those who have given their lives in the pursuit of peace and of freedom. And at the going down of the sun, and in the morning, named or unnamed, we shall remember them.